Joseph Ip has agreed to meet us, although he says he does not trust the press.
So, will you mind me recording our conversation? Okay.
Ip is a retired police officer and a staunch supporter of the Hong Kong government side in the current crisis, a side that he feels is not represented accurately in most news outlets.
I start avoiding the news since July. Watching, just avoid all news report. But you know, because I can still get in touch what was happening from all those messages from my friends.
The longer the protests last, the more stridently both camps refuse to communicate with each other. Internet forums are shaping and polarizing opinions in each group. Rumors and conspiracy theories are rampant. And when both sides meet, things often get ugly. Alfred Wong is also a retired police officer. When he walks through his neighborhood, it is hard for him to miss messages from the anti-government protesters. They have set up a so-called Lennon Wall near his home.
Here it says police are murdering people, but in fact the protesters are very aggressive. The police are just maintaining law and order.
Wong has just returned from a long stay abroad and says he doesn't recognize his city anymore. In his spare time, he sometimes helps out at police stations as a volunteer, handing out food and drinks to the frontline officers. And while he says he understands demands for greater democracy, he doesn't think they are realistic.
I used to serve in the colonial police force. Then the British government could decide on everything. Now Hong Kong belongs to China. If there are problems that the Hong Kong government can't solve, it makes sense that Beijing intervenes.
But fewer and fewer Hong Kongers are willing to accept Beijing's authority. And the clashes between police and protesters are escalating, with petrol bombs and bricks being thrown by radical protesters and police being accused of deliberately hurting demonstrators and passers-by. In a recent poll, almost 3/4 of respondents said that they thought police was using excessive violence. Joseph Ip, who also started his career in colonial times, does not agree.
At my time, we are taught that when rioters are throwing petrol bomb at you, you should shoot them with live rounds. But now, I think they are doing a great job in the sense that they are restrained.
He is glad, he says, that he is not on active duty anymore.
So we've got former police officers saying that the force has actually acted with great restraint, all things considered. I'd like to bring in Man Kay Tam of Amnesty International Hong Kong to talk more about this. Man Kay, your organization is demanding a full investigation into police brutality. What have you documented?
Well, unfortunately, Amnesty International's new field investigation shows a different conclusion. We documented an alarming pattern of the Hong Kong police force excessive use of force against protesters and evidence of torture and other ill treatment intention. For example, in several cases, detained protesters have been severely beaten up during custody. A man, for example, detained at a police station, and when he refused to answer police questions, he was taken to another room and then beaten up severely, and was threatened there to break his hands if he tried to protect himself. And also, during arrests, for another example, a young woman was locked down at the ground, and then police officers continued to beat her after her hands were tied up, zip-tied. So this kind of pattern demonstrate that the police excessive use of force becomes very common, and therefore we ask for an independent investigation against this kind of evidence.
Right. But some of the protesters have been violent. I mean, what are police supposed to do if somebody is lobbing Molotov cocktails at them?
Well, in those cases, for protesters throwing bricks, petrol bombs, if they use their violence, and I think the police has the legitimate basis to arrest them. But the principle, I mean, the international law on the use of force, the principles are, first, they have to stop that violence and try to minimize the force they use, and most importantly, to preserve the right to life. But in many of the incidents that we documented, this weren't the case.
Right. Man K. Tom, thank you.
Thank you.